And Jesus himself said that he did not come to do away with the law.
He does not take us out of this world if he does not want us to be contaminated by it.
This is the Adventist Pilgrimage Podcast with your hosts, Michael Campbell and Greg Howell.
Welcome to the Adventist Pilgrimage Podcast with your host, Michael Campbell. And I am so excited today that we have the opportunity to talk about the history of Pathfinders and the history of Camporee. We have a special guest this month for this episode, as we will be having thousands of young people and youth ministry individuals gathering from across the country and around the world for the Gillette Camporee. That I'm excited that we have Art Shumacher, who is a good friend of our family and in his own right has been very involved in Pathfinders over the years. So Art, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. It's good to be here.
All right. Well, talk to me just a little bit about your personal involvement with Pathfinders. How did you become involved with Pathfinders?
Well, way back when I was a youngster, probably, pre-10, that type of thing. Pathfinders, of course, officially it was established, I think, in the 1950 General Conference session. And so...
Officially, there had been youth ministry and
before
missionary
that,
volunteers before that.
Mm-hmm. And I know one day in church, they got up and said, well, we're going to have a training session this afternoon for anybody that'd like to be involved with Pathfinders. And so my father had an interest in us boys and my friends and things, and from Sabbath school, whatever. And so I can remember the conversation all the way home that day after church. And he says, well, should I go to the training? Should I go? Should I go? Should I not go? I don't know, back and forth with my mother. And then my father was a woodworker. He made furniture and all that type of thing. He says, well, maybe I could go and find out what it's all about, and I can be, maybe I can teach the fellows woodworking.
Sure. And
so he decided to go that afternoon to the training session, and John Hancock, who was the World Pathfinder leader at that time, was going to have the session. So I said, I want to go along. So I went along. And I didn't understand all the things that was going around. They were throwing out this big word, adolescence. So I said, what in the world's adolescence? But anyway, so I got in on that with my father. And so that's how we kind of got started. Mm-hmm. And then the local club there in South Lancaster, Massachusetts, started a club. Mm-hmm. And my father was involved, first of all, as a counselor, I think, and then because he wasn't looking particularly for leadership. Sure. But then next thing you knew, he was the boys' deputy, so he was deputy director for the boys. Sure. And then the director herself was an older lady, and she was very good, well loved by all of us Pathfinders. She was like a grandmother to us. And then she resigned or had to go on. I don't know why she left, but she couldn't do it anymore. So they asked my father to step in to be the director. And so that's how he got involved. That's how I got into it. And so it was when I was about 10 years of age or so, I joined the Pathfinder Club.
Interesting. So you're kind of on the ground floor when Pathfinders is becoming something. Really, it's becoming a thing in the Adventist Church right there in the mid-20th century. And there's something else that's quite notable, and that's one of the reasons I wanted to interview you today, is that there was the original Camporee. When and where was that, and what are your memories of that Camporee?
Well, the Camporee took place in the middle of October in 1953. Mm-hmm. And we were told at the Camporee, and there was only 55 of us Pathfinders camping, and it was a cold weekend, and probably camping was not something that was it's not camping was not like it is today. Everybody's got all the equipment, the fancy stuff and everything. But anyway,
a little more rustic.
Right. So when the GC Pathfinder leader came and he talked to us and he said, you're making history today. This is the very first Pathfinder Camporee.
Yeah.
And that always kind of stuck into my mind. Oh, I was at the very first one. And it was cold, but we survived. And I think what we did was the conference had these camp meeting tents. And so our unit, I don't know, somehow my father and there was a couple units went together and we had this great big tent and had some of these old mummy bags that probably weren't that warm either, but we survived it. And it was very cold. And they gave each one of us, they kind of prepared a menu before and said, okay, everybody's going to be responsible for their own cooking. Bring your mess kits, bring your food, bring, everything. And so we did our own cooking over a little, a campfire. Didn't have any of this modern camping things like we have today. And so we survived, we learned. And I know one of my buddies in the Pathfinder in our unit, and he made this big stack of pancakes on Sunday morning. And he didn't get them cooked quite as much as they should have been. And so he ended up going up where all the garbage was being dumped. And we kind of laughed about that. But, that's the way you learn is by all these different experiences.
Sure. And
that was sort of my first introduction to these choruses that we sing now. And the NESPAC group from the New England Memorial Hospital Pathfinder Club, they were gathering around their little campfire and singing these songs. And so we kind of migrated over to them and listening, and we kind of picked up on them. And we didn't have any idea, we sort of liked them. And after the Camporee was over, we tried to sing them and try to remember. We didn't know it all, but we've since learned them. But that was a thing because we just fell in love with all these choruses that they were singing. It was,
do you remember what any of the choruses were by chance?
Boy, at this point, I'd have to think about it for a while, but it was probably Do Lord.
Okay.
That
so
was
some kind of praise songs.
Right, praise songs. And the other one, I've got the Joy, Joy, Joy down in my heart.
All right, sure.
I think that was another
Classics, right?
Yeah, so, the real oldies.
And, so you're singing those around the campfire.
So we were singing those around these little campfires, and then we went to the big main.
Yeah. So, by the way, I want to interject for just a second. You're at Camp Winnekeg, right?
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah,
no, that's fine. Just so that people know, Camp Winnekeg is our Adventist youth camp in New England, right? That's where you guys are?
It was in Ashburnham, Massachusetts.
Sure.
That was where our youth camp was. And it's on a lake, Lake Winnekeg.
Been there many times. Very beautiful for any of our listeners that are not from New England, but it is just classic Adventist youth camp extraordinaire.
And it's just, I don't remember if the leaves must have been out because that's about the
October,
time
right?
that the leaves come out, for the colors in the fall. And it was kind of crisp, but at the end of the day, it would warm up. And so other than the Friday night and the Sabbath activities.
So you had some worship activities.
And things like that, nature things, I think. And then on Sunday, we did pathfindering skills.
I see.
One of them was, how do you tell how tall that tree is from the ground? Because you can't,
I don't know, is
we
that
learned
orienteering
that,
or what? I'm not sure what that is.
I don't know.
Okay.
We in one of the Pathfinder books of the history of Pathfinder, there's a picture of me and one of my buddies demonstrating an oven. Oh, what do you call it?
Oh, like the Dutch oven around the campfire?
Well, it wasn't a Dutch oven. It was like, they have a name for it.
But you're having to cook something in like a solar thing?
Yeah, I mean, you put up against the fire and the flames go in at the bottom and you got a shelf on the top. And so the fire and the heat goes up and bakes whatever you're baking.
Right.
I'll think of the name of it after a while. I'm having a senior
I
moment
remember, yeah. Anyway, someone listening to us will probably help remind us so we can put that in the notes later.
right now. Right. So we learned, some of these camping skills that, because we didn't have all this modern stoves and
You're just basically
tents
getting some skills.
It was just getting some basic camping skills. That's what pathfinding was all about way back then, was to teach us all these different skills.
So skills, it's a spiritual time. There's community and camaraderie around the campfire singing songs. Did you earn some honors too?
I don't know. I don't remember at that time on the Camporees that we had honors. It was more just getting together.
So community.
And getting acquainted with other Pathfinders from around the conference. There was only about 5 or maybe 6 at the most clubs that came.
Sure.
So
hard to imagine, 50 or so, 50, 60
it was about
people.
55 Pathfinders.
Pathfinders.
That's what was written up in the Junior Guide and the other, in the Atlantic Union.
So it's almost like 1 to 1,000, because I know they're expecting easily more than 55,000 this coming Camporee, maybe upwards of 70 or more thousand people. So it's going to be extraordinary. I mean, I think people back then couldn't ever dream of the kind of Camporees we're going to have here in just a few weeks. So
that's right. Yeah, it was only a small group.
Yeah. Okay.
55, and there's probably several of us that are still around because we're getting up there in years now, and so I know there's a couple that are still around, but in different places. You kind of lose track of who all the Pathfinders were, your buddies and everything. They all kind of scatter after you finish school and go around in different places. But I think we're getting fewer and fewer of that original group.
That's why I'm interviewing you, to make sure we get this rich historical context to get this down for a new generation of Pathfinders. So, what other memories do you have from that first Camporee? Anything else stand out for you?
Well, at this moment I can't particularly.
The food? You guys cook some things around
the campfire? Well, we had to cook our own food, whatever it was.
At each campfire?
Each we had a little campfire in our campsites, and they were scattered throughout the camp.
And were there some latrines or something? Bathrooms?
Well, I think we used the bathrooms that the summer camp had.
Okay, so there were some bathrooms there.
So we had
showers there too, or did you guys have to go down to the lake?
Well, we didn't do any of the showers that I remember.
Okay.
And it was kind of cold to go in the lake in the middle of
October, right? Yeah.
And it was so cold when they had the second one for us. They had that one in October, and that was so cold too. And they said, well, I think we ought to start doing it in the spring.
Huh.
So by the time the third one came along, I think it was in May. So it was warmer.
If anybody's wondering, why are you having Camporee in August, beginning of August, and it's going to be hot, most likely, it's just because those original Camporees were so cold.
Right.
So now they want to make sure everyone stays warm, I guess.
Yeah, because it was pretty cold. I mean,
that's too funny. Well, talk to me a little bit more back at the original Pathfinders after it becomes kind of a thing, right? It's becoming official. One of the things that it was called, instead of Master Guide, it was called Master Comrade. Comment for me a little bit about that.
Yeah, that was, well, I was still in grade school when that happened, when that change happened. And, Comrade, Guide. And I says, man, why are they making a change? Because I would go to an investiture for some of the adults, and they're Master Comrade. And then the Master Guide was mixed in through there. And so I think I probably asked my father or something, how come they're making the change?
Sure.
And we were just coming out of the Second World War had been over. And I guess about that time was the Korean War or something that was going on too. And so Comrade had a bad reputation, I guess, from war times, and I don't know if it had to do with the Nazi regime or something, and so they just said, instead of confusing us with these wartime activities, in the World War II and etc. Instead of calling it comrade, we're going to change it to guide, so the people won't mix us up with a paramilitary.
Yeah, especially as
group.
geopolitics and communism
Right.
and concerns in the late 50s, that becomes kind of a thing too. So then it's like, okay, so to avoid the confusion, if I'm hearing you right.
Right, that's why that was the explanation they gave to me. So
Sure.
I figured, that makes sense.
Yeah, sure.
I understand that.
So you know you have original Pathfinder material. If you have one of those scarves that says Master Comrade, that's the original, right?
Right. I don't know if I have one of those or not. I have to, because my folks passed away and we didn't have much time to go through all this stuff. Because my father was a saver.
They're pretty rare though to come across one of those.
And I went through all the trunks that I could up in the time I had to pull stuff, and I tried to pull it from other people that I know were involved in those early clubs.
Yeah.
And I don't remember I have any of those old scarves like that. I have my original pins like friend and companion, and they've changed that pins, modernized them and so forth. Those I still
Absolutely.
have those original ones.
Yeah.
Because I earned them and I, wore them on my uniform and so forth. But
Well, and they're very special. It's part of the story of Pathfinders, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Talk to me about some of the early other memories of Pathfinders and Camporees over the years. You've been to quite a number of them, so.
well, yeah, they grew and they grew, and then when I finished, I guess when I finished 8th grade and was in an academy and college, I wasn't involved really with Pathfinders
Sure.
at that point.
In a different
but
stage of life.
In a different stage of life. Well, when I got out of college and so forth and started teaching and etc., I started, working with my students and so forth and doing things with them. And that's how I kind of got back into pathfindering. And then when I went from northern New England down to the Greater New York Conference, pathfinding was kind of a strong thing that our youth director was really promoting and so forth. So I got involved again with Pathfinders and became a Pathfinder coordinator, which kind of oversaw, and there was a number of us that oversaw different clubs and was sort of an assistant to the youth man or the Pathfinder director for the conference. And then I went on to southern New England and was still a coordinator there. And one of my responsibilities was going out and trying to find places that would hold the number of Pathfinders we would have, that would allow 500, 600, or 1,000 Pathfinders to come in and camp. Because when they would think of, here comes 500 or 600 kids, and so I'd go around to the state parks or private parks, and I try to convince them, it's not like some groups that might come in or whatever, or people coming in that even small groups, So that was a challenge, but once the word got out, once you got into one of the state parks, the rangers talked to each other, and so we had a good rapport with them, and so it was a little bit easier then to try to find some places that we could to camp at. But the larger our group grew, it was that more difficult to try to find spots that would. And then by that time, more and more people were using their trailers and their campers and so on and so forth. So it wasn't so much tent camping. So if you wanted to do some rustic, say, we're going to have a Pathfinder, and I had to be sure that I had places for the people to come in with their campers and their trailers or so forth, because that was my staff.
Yeah.
So that was how the change, that's how things kind of changed over the years, and they were good leaders. And I suppose probably as they were getting older, to camp out in a tent or sleep on the ground, that wasn't the best thing either. So I can understand it now, seeing I'm older myself.
Although rumor has it you might be sleeping in a tent this next
I'll be
Camporee.
sleeping in my tent, but I have a cot, a camp cot, and I blow up a mattress in my sleeping bag, so it's quite comfortable.
Art, you're dyed-in-the-wool Pathfinder right to the end. I love this. I love this. So this is authentic. By the way, if someone listening here and says, I really want to learn more about the history of Pathfinders, there's going to be a Pathfinder museum, right, Art?
That's correct. And I think ever since we've had these big Pathfinder Camporees back in wherever the first one was now.
Campbell in 85.
Yeah, we've had a museum.
A shout out to some of our friends like Arnold and Dixie Plata,
right,
and several others that are going to be involved. And then you and I and a whole team, we're going to be at that Pathfinder Museum. So if you're listening to this and you're like, you know what, I really dig, I want to learn more, I want to see some of those old uniforms, come visit us at the Pathfinder Museum, right?
Exactly, because that's where we exhibit all these different things, and you can come through and you can see how pathfinding has progressed, the youth work in our church.
What it looks like.
And so forth. And it's quite educational. It's quite an experience. And it's good to see how different parts of the country, what they've been involved
different
with,
styles.
whether it's been the Rose Parade that we did for several years. And the first year we entered, we were, I think, a first
1992.
Place, first place float for that and so forth.
One of my treasured Pathfinder artifacts that I have, and I'll be bringing my pin with me, is that 1992 Rose Parade pin.
Okay.
I'm super excited about that.
I was there. We attended it because my wife's folks lived there in Riverside. So we went out, and one year they were looking for somebody to go on the Pathfinder float, and they came over to the conference office, and they were looking for Pathfinders. And I said, well, I got my boy, and we're planning on going out and seeing his grandparents, grandparents, and etc. And there was several other people. I said, well, probably better I don't want people to think that we're, that I have an advantage over anybody else because of my involvement.
Pushing it or something,
So that's all right. We went as a family, and we went to the parade, and somebody got there. And it was a good choice that we made. And they went around and represented our conference around the different churches and spoke about their experience. So it worked out well.
Good.
And, so we've done a lot of different things. Pathfinding has really expanded. And I remember some of the, Pastor Hancock, when I was going to be going overseas to be the Union Youth Director in Nigeria. I went down and talked with Pastor Hancock, and he gave me some materials and some different things. We talked about different things like that.
Yeah. And
I remember Norm Megdag.
Oh, there's another legend in Pathfinder history.
Right, and things, and I remember him. And I've been a lot of these different training things that these people held in different places. So we would go and do that. And part of the things as a coordinator was conducting these training sessions for the new Pathfinder leaders, or even the old ones, because we'd get together. It was sort of like a fraternity. You get together with your
people you haven't seen in a long time, right?
Right, you hadn't seen for a while, or you're involved in Pathfinders, and even now, you see people and Pathfinders.
Well, I know for us it's really special because we lived and served overseas, and there's other families from over and other places, parts of the world that I know are coming, or that served at the same time as we did, but live in very far away places. But we know they're going to be there. So one of the things we're really excited about is to get to see them. So I totally know what you're talking about, that sense of community as not only as a Seventh-day Adventist World Church family, but there's a Pathfinder family there too, right?
So if anybody's going to be here at Gillette from Nigeria, let me try to get a hold of me. I'll try to get a hold of you, because I couldn't get a visa to get into the country, so I never made it. They gave my wife a visa, But she said, for some reason, I'm not going to go without my husband. So that never worked out. So I ended up being here anyway. But so if there's anybody from Nigeria that's coming through, I hope we can connect.
Sure. So, and again, they'll find you at the Pathfinder History Museum. So excited.
Or over the Atlantic Union section where
your club is.
No, not Atlantic Union.
You're talking about the Southern Union?
Southern Union. Yeah, I'm still way back in Atlantic Union.
That's okay. So let's come back to 1985, because that's kind of the re-inauguration of a new generation or era of camporees, where they come kind of bigger and kind of a whole. What do you remember about the 85 Camp Hale Camporee?
Well, that was quite an experience. That
Colorado, right?
That was almost a 2-week thing. Which I liked.
Yeah, so bigger and longer.
Bigger and longer. It was a lot of work for those that were responsible for setting up. And I had a small club that I was director of, but there was a couple other clubs in my vicinity that says, we can't go, and we're not going, but we have some Pathfinders that need to go or want to go. Can you take them along with you? So I did. I had people from 2 other clubs that joined with us, which is all right, and that was fine. They were a big help. And here again, we pitched our tents, and we camped out, and it was kind of stony and everything, so they brought in all these hail bales, and we put hay down, and we pitched our tents on top of that, and we were comfortable, because we didn't have cots and things like that. But we did centralized cooking. And because we're up so high,
again,
of course,
this is Colorado.
You've got to make sure that things are. The boiling point was things, I guess, started to boil, but they're not hot enough to cook or something like that. So that was quite an experience. And we did various excursions off, and I remember, we met in this big, out natural amphitheater, big stage, big things up, and that was quite an experience. And you met Pathfinders from all over North America here, and the States, and that was and a chance, I think, to get honors. And the one thing that I remember was that a group of us went with Pastor Holbrook, who ended up being a World Pathfinder
Director, right?
Director, and he was, I think, a Pathfinder Director or something from one of the local conferences. And we got on this bus and went up to Mount Elbert.
Oh, really? Did you really?
And there was a bus full of us, and so the idea was to,
climb it,
but the bus is leaving at such time, so be sure you're back on the bus so you can get back home. Okay, so I started out. When you start out, it's not too bad, but the further up you get up, the harder it gets because of the elevation and so forth.
Right.
And I made it up above the tree line, and you take 5 steps, and then you'd west, and then you take, you keep going. And I kept looking at my watch, and I says, man, I don't want to miss my bus back. So I never did conquer. Some of the people did. They probably better shape than I was. Did get to the top, but I got above the tree line, and I said, well, okay, someday I might make it back. I haven't made it back, but I came back down.
You don't want to miss that bus.
So I didn't want to miss the bus, so I got on the bus and came back. So I remember that experience. That was kind of outstanding for that first camporee.
Working on your hiking requirements there,
right, So I got my exercise in that day, and one day we went off someplace we swam in the hot springs.
Oh, now that sounds like fun.
And that was fun. So we had fun things as well as, and it was an experience, and it was a growing experience because it was the first big camporee of that size of everybody across North America coming to.
Right.
So it was bigger than just a union one or a local conference camporee, but it was the first one we had. And
so 53 is getting it started, but it's really a group of clubs in a region, in a local area. But now 85, you're really having a lot more clubs. It's a bigger production,
Right.
and all across the division, if I'm hearing you right.
Mm-hmm. And a lot more planning, I'm sure, that goes into things
A little more
like
complexity.
that. And even for the local club, it's more planning. I mean, you don't just,
Show
okay,
up, yeah.
here I'm showing up with my, a few kids, and we're gonna, and so it does take a little bit of planning. But if you plan ahead, everything falls into place.
Sure.
So
And I've heard a lot of good things about that. By the way, when did Pathfinder pins become a thing? Was that in
for
85?
trading? Yeah,
Was
I
it
think
before?
in Campbell they started
Campbell?
trading plague. I think as time went on and people caught on to what was going on, I think more and more Pathfinders and staff have been trading pins
Ever since. It's kind of
ever since.
It's kind of grown every
I think it
Camporee,
grew every
right?
year. Yeah, right. It just seems like there's more and more. My wife was the one that was into pin trading more
Was
than
she?
I was, so she did
She
it.
was
and
excited, huh?
So I probably got her pin collection at home, but but she was the pin collector,
That's cool.
and so I left that up to her. That was her thing,
Sure.
because she enjoyed doing that and talking and
Meeting new people.
meeting the new people and talking to the Pathfinders. That was her ministry, and because all during our married life, and I was 56 years, we were married, and she was the Pathfinder. We were a Pathfinder team,
Sure.
and so we worked together in Pathfinders all those years. And when she knew I was involved with Pathfinders before we got married, she says, "Wow," because she'd been a Pathfinder as a youngster, as a Pathfinder, and she says, "Well, boy, if he's going to be involved in Pathfinders, I better get involved myself a little bit." So she joined the local club out there in Riverside, and one of the clubs, and was a counselor and so forth. And so she got some experience. And then when we got married, she just got right in, and
Sure.
away we went.
So Pathfinders is like in your DNA. It's
Right.
like right in the center of your marriage and your whole story, your life story. That's amazing.
Yeah, well, our motto is, once a Pathfinder, always a Pathfinder.
Indeed.
And so we've done that and been happy to do it.
Love it.
So yeah, the pin trading is really taken off, I think, and so you just have
Now
to
there's a whole honor on pin trading. So
right.
if you're there at Camporee and have not gotten your pin trading honor, make sure you work with your club on making sure that you trade some pins and can do that. So any other memories that stand out for you?
Honors, talking
Yeah.
about pins, honors have expanded
enormously too,
enormously too.
right?
'Cause back when I was a Pathfinder, there wasn't that many, not as many as they have today, and they got so many new ones that come out. I says, "Wow,
How do you keep up with that, right?
yeah, I keep up with that." So my wife
Yeah.
was one here again. She liked to. I mean, I collected some too, but I mean,
There's a lot
honors
more.
and that type of thing, and you teach different honors. But
Yeah.
she was the one that really went for that. That was one of her things that she really enjoyed doing and getting honors and learning new things and whatever it was. And we taught honors too, and she taught nature honors. And one of her things was the sand honor.
Oh, sure.
And
I love that honor, by the way.
so what she did was that we have a friend, and he was at the first Pathfinder Camporee too with me back in '53.
No kidding.
He was a dentist,
Uh-huh.
and that was the day that they had Novocaine vials. And so he would clean them all up for us, and he would save them for us. And so that's what we've used for
Your little
my
sand
wife's
samples?
sand collection. And
Wow.
so any place that my wife knew, if you're making a trip somewhere, she says, "Bring me back some sand. Just bring me back a couple teaspoons of sand."
Put it in that Novocaine bottle, huh?
Yeah, and when you came back, we have at home, I have the fellow before me that we bought the house from, he was a Civil War person, and he built down in the basement a Civil War museum. Well, we've turned it into a Pathfinder museum and other things too, but we have a lot of memorabilia from Pathfinders.
Sure.
And so we have our sand honor, and we've got other things there from Pathfindering that we've got displayed there.
Right.
So she's got this big thing of sand honor, and so that was, one thing that was my wife, I guess, was noted for she would go to Camporees or something or different places and teach the sand honor. And it's interesting, around the world, you think about sand, it's different.
Yeah. Unique.
Different
textures and types of material that the sand is made from. And
right.
Yeah. I know my family, they kind of tease me a little bit sometimes, but I have these little containers of sand. It goes all the way back to when I did the sand honor when I was a Pathfinder.
Right.
And I've been collecting sand ever since, and I have to restrain myself,
So we just tell them, put it down in your suitcase, and with your clothes, and I don't know if it's illegal or not, but I said we don't have to bring a lot, just to,
don't break the law.
But
but it is fun, isn't it?
It is.
Yeah.
So
well, that's neat. Any other Pathfinder honors that are memorable to you that you're fond of?
Well, I can remember my first Pathfinder honor was the dog honor.
Was it really?
The one of the consulars, he was into that, and so man, I studied for that, and so that was the first honor I received. And I've received, a lot of different other things since then, but I remember that because it was my first one, I guess, so that was memorable. But you get to the point after a while, you got only so much room on your sash anyway.
That's true. Although some people have sashes with so many honors, they look like blankets,
Right, or they go back and
crisscross
I don't even know
like how you wear that, because after some point, what do you do? But it's still fun.
That's how come we came out with the master honor thing, or whatever they call it, so that you can say, okay, after so many honors in this particular field, nature or whatever, you get this big master thing. So
and by the way, just a little shout out for those of you that are listening, our North American Division Department of Archive, Statistics, and Research, we are sponsoring, by the way, co-sponsoring, I should say, because thanks to NAD Women's Ministries, the Women in Adventist History Honor, which will be making its grand debut. So come check that out in the exhibit hall. You can just see where they're teaching that, and some of the young ladies that helped to create the honor will be also assisting and helping to teach the honor. So I'm really thrilled about that, and so. Check that out. Special opportunity. And since I'm doing shameless advertising here, Matthew, Lucio, and I are working on an Adventist Heritage Tour in October. So watching the show notes, if you are interested in going up into New England with my good buddy Matthew Lucio with the Adventist History Podcast and want to just immerse yourself in some Adventist history, this is your golden opportunity. So go on our website. We still have a few spaces left on our tour, and so we want to invite you to come join us. But anyways, back to our program here on Pathfinder history. That's amazing. These honors, the dog honor. Any other special aspects of Pathfinders that just comes to mind as you reflect upon your life experience with Pathfinders? You've been a Pathfinder, you've been a club director. Here you have gone to all the way back to 53. Now you're going to be going to this next Camporee, and
come by the museum. I don't know what my schedule's going to be, but come by and
visit the museum, learn about the history of Pathfinders,
and say hello to me.
Yeah,
I'll be there sometime or another.
Yeah, and
I know 10 years ago. When we were there, they had on the wall as you came in a picture, I guess me and a write-up or something that they had displayed about me being at the first Camporee, and
sure.
And I was down at the end when people went out, and they saw me. Oh, you were the first, and so I did a lot of autographs, but particularly from people from outside the country, because that was exciting for them too.
So you've seen Pathfinders change a lot over the decades. You've seen Camporees change a lot.
uniforms changed,
Mm-hmm.
because we used to be all khaki for the fellas, and then I guess they thought that was too military, so that's
Yeah,
when
right.
they went to the black and the girls used to be all green or something, and so the uniforms have changed. So
Yeah.
as time goes by, we try to
Yeah.
modernize or keep up with the times.
But Art, one thing hasn't changed, and that is the spirit of Pathfinders.
That's true. That's
The
true.
spirit of Pathfinders. And, that's what I love that is contagious, I think, across generations, and why we gather and go to so much expense and energy to gather in Gillette, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Opportunity for discipleship and community. And that takes us back to that first Camporee in 1953, doesn't it?
Right. That was the forerunner, and it's been going stronger and stronger ever since.
Mhm. And most important of all is keeping this anchored and centered on Jesus. It's an opportunity for discipleship, right?
Yes, that's true. That's true. And I'm sure that a lot of Pathfinders over the years have gone out, and I'm not saying they've all been pastors or nurses or doctors or whatever like that, because I think everything that anybody does is a ministry.
Sure.
And I think that there's been a lot of people that have gone out and served the Lord, and pathfindering was something that kept them in the church, kept us going,
Mm-hmm.
kept us involved, and so forth and so on. And so I would recommend pathfindering to anybody. If you don't have a club in your church or something, talk to your pastor or somebody.
Start one, right? You can start one.
And start one up.
Mm-hmm.
I've had a Pathfinder club, I think, for one or two before.
Mm-hmm.
Not one. I did. And I went to a Pathfinder Camporee. It was a local conference camporee, and we have events.
Mm-hmm.
And he was very sharp. And some of the events, you need more than just one,
Yeah, you need a whole
it's
team.
better if you have more than one. But
Right.
So I said to the staff or the
Mhm.
people there, the other directors, I said, look, I've got just one Pathfinder. He's good. If he can keep running back and forth and can do it, we allow the one to do it. And I said, and if there's something that really makes a team, can I go in and be the second one of the team, because that's all we have is the one Pathfinder. And they said, okay, we'll give him the disadvantage. We'll let you participate with him. So, it only takes one. And so if you're the only one,
Be the one.
It only takes one to be a Pathfinder and have a club. And so I've had it for clubs. I believe so strongly in it.
Mm-hmm.
I did it just for that one, and they look back on it, and my clubs have not been very, very large.
Mm-hmm.
And the Pathfinders I've had, man,
Mm-hmm.
they just ate it up, and
Yeah.
oh man, this is great.
Well, I love it. So this comes back to just the essence of Pathfinders, being something fun, but also being something that is discipleship-oriented, learning life skills, and most of all, growing closer to Jesus and growing closer to one another. And that's just the heart of Pathfinders. Art, I can't wait to see you at Camporee. It's only about 3 weeks away.
Same here.
Yeah, and I've been looking forward to this with anticipation for some time, but I'm just praising the Lord for this opportunity that we have. And until Jesus comes, this is a way that we can gather together. So thanks for listening to the Adventist Pilgrimage Podcast. Thank you, Art, for sharing.
Well, you're welcome.
I just am so delighted to have you on this podcast, and a very timely opportunity for us to talk about this together. And once again, as you've been listening to Art Shumacher, one of the long-standing Pathfinder historians going back to the first Camporee in 1953. If you want to learn more about the history of Pathfinders, check out the Pathfinder Museum at Camporee in Gillette, and I hope to see you there. You'll see Art there. We'll be hanging out there this summer at Camporee. And until next month, I want to invite you to come back and listen and join in as we dive deeper into our Adventist past each month, as my co-host Greg Howell and I, as we take a deep dive into our Adventist past. You've been listening to the Adventist Pilgrimage Podcast. Until next month, this is your host, Michael Campbell, signing off.
And Jesus himself said that he did not come to do away with the law,